Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Barry Vesser, and I work with the Climate Center. We are a nonprofit organization that focuses on climate policy in California to rapidly reduce climate pollution at speed and scale, starting in California. And I also want to take a moment to thank the elected officials to Protect America for partnering with us on this press event. I'm here today with a group of distinguished elected officials to reassure our friends at COP that climate progress continues in the United States despite President Trump pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accords again. I want to apologize to the global community for our president taking such rash and misguided action. The vast majority of Americans want to take climate action, and they want to be good neighbors. I also want to acknowledge the very real damage done to our global neighbors, particularly our brothers and sisters in the global south, by the United States not fully shouldering its responsibilities. And let's be clear that the Trump administration's anti-science, anti-climate agenda has also hurt progress in the United States. One small example, in California, the federal government has reneged on well over $1 billion of climate investment funds in the last 6 months. And that's just for starters. But that has not stopped our progress, slowed it a bit, but not stopped it. And that is because local governments, state governments, businesses, civic organizations continue to move that banner forward. You'll hear today, well, first I should say, what you won't hear today is happy talk. We know that there's a lot to be done, and we're nowhere near where we need to be. But what you will hear is momentum happening, moving in the right direction because of the efforts of people like we have on the stage with us today. So I'm going to ask each of our speakers today to address the question of what kind of progress is being made in their jurisdiction or their agency under the current administration. And I'm going to start off with Senator Josh Becker. And Senator Becker represents part of San Mateo County and also northern Santa Clara County, and a good chunk of what we call Silicon Valley. He is a public policy innovator working at the nexus of climate, technology, and social justice. Elected to the California State Senate in 2020, Senator Becker represents over 1 million Californians. He is the chair of California's Senate Energy Committee and recently helped pass a critical electricity affordability legislation that will save significant money for all Californians. Senator Becker, please tell us where you're at.
Well, first of all, thank you to you, Barry. Thank you to the Climate Center. Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to see folks, some I've met in the last few days. I have constituents here as well in this room here. I think the most important thing for us is showing up and engaging with the global community, and to tell people that President Trump does not speak for all Americans. As I mentioned the other day, maybe some of you were here, in California, we continue to believe, by overwhelming majorities, that confronting climate change and accelerating clean energy is not just an environmental priority, but it's a moral, an economic, and a public health imperative. And I shared how my son had just turned 20 2 days ago, and So for me, this is about protecting the planet, our economy, but it's also our children's future. And the good news is we have lots of good news to share about California's commitment, California's progress. And it takes both. It really takes the policy and setting that framework, but it also takes our nonprofit partners and it takes industry as well to step up. When we first set a 5% RPS, renewable portfolio standard, people said, oh, that's too high. 5% of renewable energy has to be from electricity has to be renewable sources. And then we said 15%, and then we achieved that. And then we said 25%, and then we said 50%, and then we said 60%. Now we have 100% clean electricity standard by 2045, and we are well on the way. We're already up to 70% of our energy is from renewable sources, and we should be about 85% by 2035. And again, this is for an economy. If we were our own state, we'd be the fourth largest economy in the world. So that's just one measure and one piece. Because when it comes to climate progress, as we all know, it takes everything. You have to look at every area of the economy. Transportation, 29% of our cars sold last year in California, last quarter, were electric vehicles. We're up to about 7% of the fleet. We now have more charging stations than we do have gas stations in California. But of course, we have to now work the clean trucks and some of the other things that have been hindered by the Trump administration. We need to keep moving forward. But in other areas, we're doing that as well and seeing that progress. We had 9 out of 10 days in the first half of 2025 where we had 100% clean energy for at least part of the day. On average, we had 100% clean energy for 7 hours a day of those 9 out of 10 days in the first half of this year. We built the biggest wind farm, the biggest solar farm, the biggest thin film, we have the biggest solar roof, which is actually the Apple campus in my district. So a lot of firsts, but really what's most important is that day-to-day progress. And what we did this year is we just said our carbon pricing scheme, we call Cap and Invest, we have to strengthen it, move it forward, extend it to 2045. And that was our important message to our economy and to our business community, but it's really the way that we now relate here with the rest of the world, talking about our goals and our progress and learning from other nations. So happy to be here. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Senator Becker. Next, I'm going to go to Alex Cornell DeHoo, who is elected officials to protect America's president and co-founder. He is also a former Maine state representative and a former combat Marine. Thank you for your service, Alex. After Alex was elected to the Maine House of Representatives, he sponsored 14 successful pieces of legislation and co-sponsored 98 successful bills. He co-founded and ran Operation Free, a coalition of veterans working on energy and climate security. He leads efforts at EOPA with veterans who are elected officials to ensure that clean energy solutions are implemented and to protect our public lands and democracy. Internationally, he is spearheading EOPA's Energy Security Marshall Plan for Ukraine. He served in the Marine Corps infantry and has deployed in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Alex, tell us what you think about that question. What kind of progress are we making under the Trump administration?
So in the Marine Corps, we have a saying. It's called Message to Garcia. And what that means is the commander's intent is given, and we find a way to make it happen. And in many ways, we know what the intent here is because it's life and death for many people. For me, that was when I was deployed to Iraq with the Marines, and someone tried to blow my vehicle up. Fortunately, they weren't very good at it, and as the dust was clearing, we followed the wire and caught the person and realized they were just a farmer who had been paid $200 by Al-Qaeda because of the roadside bomb. And what we realized from there is that what's happening globally has local effects that have real consequences in people's lives. And so the message that the global community has sent to America is that we need to take action no matter what. And the subnational governments have listened, and we're excited to participate and make sure that message is delivered. And so that's why the elected officials to protect America, our members across the United States are tirelessly implementing clean energy solutions, nature-based solutions. For instance, with our partnership with ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, the Municipal Investment Fund that came out of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund has already provided 50 communities with $250,000 to seed innovative ideas. And through our Public Leadership Certificate program, where we bring lawmakers from the US and around the world to provide innovative ideas, we'll be providing additional funding for those municipalities to come up with creative climate solutions that can accelerate between the public and private partnerships and philanthropy working together to continue the solutions at the local and state level. In Hawaii, their virtual power plant program, or basically distributed electric energy, pooling to create a giant battery, has removed the need for a coal power plant ahead of schedule. When we look at Molokai, it's a wonderful example of a nature-based solution where we can reforest a third of the island that was destroyed by a ranch using atmospheric water generators. And then as the trees grow, they will create their own microclimate and forever it's capture that carbon. And then we can, under Article 6 here, that can be a revenue stream to continue that further. The tribal members at the Blue Lake Rancheria up in Northern California, they've pioneered grid energy that's a microgrid. And although they lost the federal funding, philanthropy and others have stepped in, and so they're still continuing to make that microgrid that is making the community so much more resilient, secure, and prosperous. Coming back to my home state of Maine, we have the first floating offshore wind turbine in the United States. And that was literally floated out there just as the Trump administration was cutting all the funding for it. The state found that initial investment to get it out there so we can continue the research and development that is unbelievably important, and partnering with Berkeley and other universities in California to figure out how to effectively implement offshore wind in the United States, because you could power the US twice over with offshore wind. Similarly, in California, the ports aren't waiting. California is investing in the ports to get them ready for the offshore wind development. And so we were just there working with the local electeds as the money came in to make them shovel ready. And so one last shout out for Maine, just because some innovative ideas with greenhouse agriculture. So if you look at the second most exporter of agriculture in the world, it's Norway. Because they're amazing at greenhouse agriculture. And so Maine has taken maybe a little learning from them, because we're both cold, and growing tomatoes and lettuce and partnering with fish so you can have a circular economy that uses only about 10% of the water we normally use. These innovative ideas are happening right now, and because 72% of the US counties lean blue, that's 72% of the economic power in the United States, right? 8 out of the 10 states in the US lean blue, and they would tend to vote for climate. And we saw this during the last election, right? People care about their energy prices, and they're seeing them going up. People care about their health. And so inherently, we're seeing the US population join the subnationals in ensuring that we are still in and protecting our prosperity, our health, and our security.
Thank you so much, Alex, for those great examples. And I am going to move on to Supervisor Linda Hopkins, who is a local elected official who represents the county of Sonoma in California, which is a little north of San Francisco, and is also the county where I live. I am grateful to be represented by her and for her presence here at COP. She also sits on boards of numerous local and regional agencies which are relevant to her presence here at COP. They include the Bay Area Air District, where she is chair. She's actually also chair of the Regional Climate Protection Authority, Sonoma County Transportation Authority, Sonoma Clean Power, which is a local energy service provider, as well as the director of the Russian River Watershed Association, and she serves on the Santa Rosa Groundwater Sustainability Agency and Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District. You may be wondering, along with me, when she sleeps. Linda's interest in public policy began while attending Stanford University, where she studied interdisciplinary environmental sciences. And along with her husband, she founded and ran a row crop farm for more than 10 years. So I think it's fair to say that she's had her hands in the soil. So Linda, would you like to tell us what's happening locally that addresses these issues?
Thank you so much. I want to start off by just acknowledging that it is a very strange thing right now to be an American at an international conference. To be clear, I didn't vote for the guy, but we do have a president who is not only trying to really destroy the social safety net and also environmental infrastructure that our country is built on, but also really doing that to the world right now. And the federal government's lack of presence here is astounding. And so I'm so proud to be joined by Americans who are willing to try to fight the good fight. And so thank you for being here with us today. In addition to being an American and a mom of 3 kids that I miss very much while I'm here in Brazil, I'm also a member of a bunch of agencies that people have probably never heard of, right? They're this kind of in-between space where I'm not a mayor, I'm not something sort of in a city that is tangible, but where we actually have substantial authority over environmental policies at the local level, and we can actually roll up our sleeves and get dirty, honestly, which as a farmer is what I love. So I'm the chair of the Bay Area Air District. Well, what is an air district? We fight every day for clean air for the 7.5 million people who live in the Bay Area in California. That encompasses over 100 cities and 9 counties. And I want to share a little bit of bright news, which is that recently we actually passed a zero NOx rule, which means actually, so NOx, if everyone's not familiar with that, right, that's nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide. And those are some pollutants that cause substantial health impacts, right? Pulmonary cardio impacts, asthma in kids, really substantial health impacts, especially to those communities that are also potentially fence line communities who live near refineries. Well, we were the first ones in the state of California to say that those 7.5 million people living in the Bay Area, if their hot water heater fails or their space heater fails, they're going to have to switch to a zero NOx version, which means all electric, which is going to both improve air quality and also decrease our reliance on fossil fuels in the Bay Area. I'm also actually a member of the North Coast Resource Partnership. What is the North Coast Resource Partnership? We actually cover 12% of the state of California's land mass. So this is actually north of the Bay Area, and it goes all the way up to the Oregon border. 50% of the folks living in that land mass actually live below the poverty line. And we are actually, despite being 12% of the land mass of California, responsible for 25% of the wildfire footprint. So we were heavily impacted by wildfires. And this is actually the only form of governance in the United States of America in which tribal leaders sit alongside county elected officials to roll up our sleeves and to try to improve the environment. And this is important because, another irony of being an American at this conference and coming to the Global South is that our country is responsible for a lot of what has already been put into the atmosphere. And our economic prosperity is founded on impacts that the entire world is feeling right now. Similarly, the indigenous people of the state of California have disproportionately suffered racial justice harms, environmental justice harms, and so actually co-leading with them and the fact that they are willing as sovereign nations, there are 35 tribes in our jurisdiction and 7 counties, and we are actually making decisions together to restore watershed, to reduce wildfire risk, and to try to provide clean drinking water, all of which have climate benefits. And finally, I just also want to mention that as the immediate past chair of Sonoma Clean Power, we are leading a geozone initiative. And if you are not familiar with enhanced or advanced geothermal, it is something that you should definitely learn more about. It is a low water, 24/7, 365 renewable power source. And it can actually be deployed in most of the state of California. And so we have set out a goal, which is in Sonoma and Mendocino counties. We're coming together. We're trying to partner also with Lake County to deploy 600 megawatts of next generation geothermal energy. And so, apologies for the current federal dumpster fire, which we are not personally responsible for, but please know that there are good folks working on the ground trying to make sure that we are doing the right thing by our country and by the world.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I'll just add another little footnote to what Linda said about advanced geothermal. It is the only renewable resource that the Trump administration is not adversely opposed to. So that's another good reason we can make progress on it right now, and it is a great resource. So I encourage you all to check it out as well. So a lot of what we just recounted is looking back at things that have been accomplished, which is great. But I want to ask you a question of looking forward. What are things you feel that the state and local government and local agencies can do to make more progress on climate with the current regime, not needing to coordinate with the federal government or being blocked by it? And why don't we start with you, Senator Becker, and then we'll go down the line, if that's all right.
Well, I have a whole long list, which I don't know if we have time for. I'll just, and some of these are a little bit wonky because that's the world I live in with energy policy, but certainly affordability. Number one, we have to keep making sure electricity is affordable if we're going to bring everyone along in the clean energy transition and make it work for them. Zero emission vehicles, as I said, is a key part of that, pushing back the Trump eliminated California's waivers that gave us certain rights to set our own policy. But we have some ideas for next year to get around that and to keep moving forward. Around buildings, which is about 13% of our emissions of the building sector, we've heard what's happening locally. We have also at the state level, through a bill I did, we created a building performance standard that should be coming back to us from our Energy Commission so that we can reduce the emissions from existing buildings. The Air Board should soon publish its strategy for getting cement producers to net zero. Through another bill that I did, we know that cement is 7% of the world's carbon emissions. We know that figuring out our Air Resources Board is implementing now our corporate disclosure. So we passed the strongest corporate emissions disclosure in the country. So we're working on implementing those. But we still need strategies to reduce emissions from the industrial sector. That's 25%, made no progress really anywhere in the country. So that's a key focus of mine personally. As well as we still need a strategy if we're going to talk about getting to net zero. I was just on a panel on carbon removal. So we need to know how to measure, count, and incentivize those emissions as well. So the to-do list is still extremely long, even though we came up with some big wins this past year. But it's really about how do we keep driving forward. And a lot of the lessons learned here are going to be helpful in that.
Great. Linda, you want to answer the same question?
Yeah. I would just say that in order to succeed, we really need to look at collective impact. If it's just local government trying to solve this problem, we're going to fail. If it's just state government trying to solve this problem, we're going to fail. If it's just the private sector trying to solve this problem, or communities trying to organize individually, none of us are going to succeed. But I really feel like the magic happens when you have grassroots community organization, you have local government on board, you have phenomenal state leadership, right, willing to push the envelope, willing to take risks, and we're all rowing in the same direction. One other thing that I want to mention, and I really appreciate Senator Becker's support and leadership, is that we're also trying to figure out how do we streamline permitting processes to do the right thing, right? Should we be applying sort of the same standards to like an oil refinery that we would to enhanced or advanced geothermal, for instance? And so I think that figuring out how to cut through the green tape to try to achieve the solutions that we know will provide tremendous greenhouse gas emissions reductions and also, PM 2.5 and NOx reductions as well in the long run are what we need to be working on. And so I also just want to say quick shout out to Senator Becker for being everywhere at this conference. I don't think I've ever gotten to spend like this much time just with a state senator. And so even the conversations that we're having here amongst ourselves, I think are going to be really valuable to bring back home and figure out how are we aligning between local and state government.
It really is a wonderful question because it outlines what the trends that are happening. There was a report that came out of the University of Maryland that says if the states accelerate their impact and then the federal government steps in 2028, we can still reduce our carbon pollution by 56% by 2035. And so we can still stay on track if we step up and do it urgently. And so, for instance, there are innovative financing mechanisms we can do at the state and local level. So, for instance, DC passed one where the buildings, you'll get a fee if you're emitting more emissions after a certain point, and which is encouraging them to invest in renewable and green buildings, essentially. The other section is take a battery storage area where there's an interconnect. Instead of just one grant to put it in there or support it, create a revolving fund that continues to support the community with community solar battery, right? These are things that we can partner with the public-private sector on. Because a lot of the mindset sometimes is you get grant and you execute, rather than just be creative and bring these things together. And lastly, I'll say, at the same stage, we had a Ukrainian, Evgeny Kapitsa, talk about the dangers of funding the bombs and bullets hitting Ukraine, and how that is literally from a fossil fuel dictator, because the number one threat to dictators is clean energy, because they're reliant on that financing. And as a result, we can have sister cities like we have between Chernihiv, Kent, and Virginia, and so the US cities can have a global leadership in educating with the technical assistance that we've gone through to help other places in the world accelerate. So we don't need to wait for a federal government or a State Department. The cities and the states and the oblasts can work together to provide that assistance and encouragement, and at the same time learn from the innovative nature of the Ukrainians who are resilient and other countries around the world.
Thank you all. So one quick question. We don't have much time left, so this is like a 30-second answer, and it's not an easy one. What do you think? Do you think we can win on climate politically? And if so, what do you think the message should be?
Well, the reason I'm wearing this shirt is this is what I ran on, the California Climate Army. That's what I ran with this message, and I won, and that's why I'm taking that as my mandate to act on here. And I think certainly in the Bay Area, it resonates. We've had the wildfires. People are starting to make the connection to the climate impact, the climate crisis, and the impact on their daily lives. And that's really what we have to do, but also tell them that these solutions now, not tell them, but show them that all these climate solutions are actually better products and will make their lives better.
And I would just say that I think folks a lot of times pit business against the environment, whereas I think that we have the biggest economic development opportunity of our generation in terms of actually effecting the just transition. And if we actually want affordable energy into the future, we need to go for 24/7, 365 renewable power. That will keep us all powered up for future generations.
And just to dovetail on that, when you look at all the countries that implemented progress towards combating climate change, all their GDPs have grown. So that not only helps the country, but just as importantly, the individuals and the people in the community who are living their daily lives to ensure that the electric bills go down, to ensure that you can breathe clean air. And people inherently are seeing this. We saw during the last election, particularly electric costs have skyrocketed in these states. And the folks who are favoring climate action urgency won those elections by a landslide. So I think climate is a winning issue.
Great, thank you all. Let's thank our panelists. And thank you all for spending a warm late afternoon with us. We really appreciate it.